Minecraft player versus player combat has remained a crucial element of the game since its inception in 2011. While the survival element of the game has been designed to revolve around the player themselves, the single player experience can get lonely. Hence, multiplayer servers have been established to connect players from anywhere in the world to play together. These servers offer a variety of game modes, including renowned ones such as Skyblock and Bed Wars, and for players to queue into a lobby to fight one another, player versus player or PvP for short. However, unlike the former two, the PvP community has been divided for nearly a decade, with many refusing to update from an 8-year-old version of the game. So, the question inevitably arises, why? Unlike other game modes, PvP is not limited to simply defeating an opponent. Rather, it is a playstyle which demands practice, grit, motivation, and skill. Veteran players spend months perfecting their stride and finding potential weaknesses in their opponents. And so, it is to no surprise that when the 1.9 combat update overhauled the combat system in December 2015, it would divide this community for years to come. The combat update changed two key aspects of PvP, those being the addition of an attack strength and the revamp to the axe. The axe strength, the amount of damage a click of a mouse can do, was no longer constant and would depend on an attack cooldown. If timed incorrectly, the damage one could inflict on their opponent could amount to 0. This meant that spam clicking, the process of clicking one's mouse as fast as possible, was no longer the viable method of combat. Players now had to time their hits accurately to inflict as much damage to their opponent as they could. Additionally, the axe received a critical update. If timed correctly, it could achieve more damage than the sword, the previous choice of weapon. It was also the only tool which could disable the shield, which could block almost all damage, including that of a sword. This rendered the sword completely useless, becoming a disadvantage if used in almost any scenario. The axe fast became the go-to weapon for PvP battles, its benefits overshadowing those of the sword. The update was poorly received in the PvP community, especially from veteran players. The most effective tactic available, or meta for short, was changed from combos, wherein players were able to get several chain hits on their opponents for maximum damage, to calculated hits. This meant that the fights themselves required more thinking before attacking, since one missed hit could make the difference between victory and defeat. For players, this meant that the fights became less action-packed and significantly slower, with a few hits deciding the fate of the game. Many found PvP less interesting after the update, and thus less fun to play on. Furthermore, those who spent years training found themselves on an equal footing to those who just started, since the update revamped everything. These players felt betrayed as their experience in PvP could potentially work against them. For instance, those comfortable with the sword would take longer to adapt to the axe, compared to newer players who would be introduced to the latter directly. Experienced players used to spam clicking would take much longer to adjust themselves to click at analyze intervals instead. The PvP community was split in half, with some moving on to the new combat system and many refusing to update. Those who updated began to find newer strategies to give themselves the edge over their opponents and studied how each web performed against others in certain circumstances. The meta was re-evaluated and required several weeks for determined players to perfect consistently. For example, the fishing rod, a tool able to harm players from a set distance, was retired in favor of the crossbow, which could hit an opponent from an even further distance with more damage. Combos were replaced by critical hits, which could do 50% more damage if timed correctly. However, those who refused to update were not at a total loss. The community strived to keep 1.8 combat relevant and attempted to gather enough traction to revert the controversial changes. While they never did, their attempts were not in vain. Many multiplayer servers, including some of the largest and well-renowned ones, did not update to 1.9. The most popular minigames, such as Bed Wars, stayed on the previous version. Likewise, high-profile content creators, such as Technoblade, continued to make content on 1.8, consequently keeping it relevant for many years afterwards. The 1.9 combat update overhauled the combat system by adding cooldowns and revamping the choice of weapons, and divided the community for years afterwards, with many still refusing to update to the latest version. To this day, 1.9 has remained Minecraft's most controversial update, since the PvP system never required any changes to it in the first place. However, tensions may have toned down. 1.8 players are now missing out on 80 years of additional updates and lack the latest features available today. Newer players who have started after the 1.9 update are unaware about what made 1.8 special and, thus, optionally choose to play on the most updated version of Minecraft, reducing the demand for 1.8 based content. Looking ahead, with the player base of Minecraft skyrocketing, players may finally unanimously agree to play on the more updated versions of the game and accept the combat changes, since PvP is only a fraction of what one can do in the game. Perhaps an important takeaway is that there is no right and wrong way to play Minecraft, as the player makes choices themselves in almost every scenario. In the grand scheme of things, Minecraft is a block game, and no matter how infamous a change can be, it is simply just an update.